Today we're going to take a look at section 10.1, which is the introduction to conic sections, and the first of the conic sections that we're going to study are circles. Okay, so we have our definition of a circle here. So a circle is a set of points equidistant from its center. The distance from any point on the circle to its center is the radius, and all radii for a particular circle will be congruent. Okay, so here we have a circle drawn. It's centered at the origin, which is 0, 0. And we want to go through and we want to derive what the formula is for this circle. So I'm going to pick a generic point anywhere on the circle, and I'm going to call that x comma y. And then I'm also going to mark the origin, which we know is 0 comma 0. And right there is the radius, which is r. Okay? Now, we know that the radius is the same for any point that I pick somewhere on the circle. So that means the distance between these 2 points and the distance between these 2 points and any 2 points, any point on the circle in the center will always be the same. So we can use the distance formula to come up with a formula or a equation for this circle, okay? So I'm going to write down what the distance formula is. So distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So if we take that and plug in our points x comma y, which is some random xy point on the circle, and the center 0, 0, we can essentially have the radius take the place of the distance, okay? So that would be the radius is equal to the square root of, for the x values I have x and 0. For the y values I have y and 0. So that's going to give me that the radius is equal to the square root of, this will just be x squared, and this will just be y squared. All right, and then the convention for a circle is to get rid of the square root sign. So if I square both sides, I can eliminate the square root, and that will give me the radius squared is equal to x squared plus y squared. So this is the equation of a circle centered at the origin 0, 0. Okay? And later on we'll talk about, well, how does this formula get modified when we have a center not at 0, 0. Okay, so any circle centered at 0, 0 would be written in the form x squared plus y squared equals r squared. Okay, so now if I give you some information, you should be able to write an equation that matches the information given. So let's take a look at that. All right, so for the first one, we are going to be given a point on the circle. Okay, so write an equation in standard form. For a circle centered at the origin that, and we're going to do 2 of these. Okay, so for part A, for our first problem, that passes through the point -3, 4. And for part B, we're going to do that has a radius of 5 square root 3. Okay, so we're going to write 2 separate equations here. Okay, so for part A, we're going to go through and we're going to use this xy point to write an equation. Now we know that standard form is x squared plus y squared is equal to the radius squared. Well, this is x, so I can replace x with -3. This is y, so I can replace y with a 4. And then I can solve for, well, what's the radius? Or what's the radius squared, rather? Okay, so I really just have 9 plus 16 equals r squared. So that means r squared is equal to 25, meaning the radius itself would be 5. All right, but we want to have r squared in our formula. So all I need you to do is go back to the original with the x squared plus y squared and replace the r squared with 25. So that's the equation of the circle in standard form, okay? So when you're given a point, all you need to do is plug it in for x and y and figure out the value of r squared, and then replace the r squared in the original setup. Okay? For this second one, we're given the radius, so I want to figure out, well, what's r squared? And then I can just plug it in right there, then I just keep x squared plus y squared, and this r squared will become a number. So r squared will be whatever 5 square root of 3 squared is. Okay, so that means I need to square both of these inside pieces. So that's going to be 5 squared times the square root of 3 squared. So 5 squared is 25. The square root of 3 squared is just 3. So this comes out to 75. So that means when I go through and I write my equation, I'm going to have x squared plus y squared, as every equation of a circle centered at the origin will have, and then the radius squared will be 75. Okay? So that's writing equations of circles in standard form when it's centered at the origin. Next up, we're going to take a look at how do we do this if we're not centered at the origin.